When I was 12 years old, I've came into a conclusion that everyone on this planet, including my parents, were against me. I was never a problematic kid, but my parents had the same strictness as other parents would use if their child was record-breaking problematic. For example, my parents always forced me to just study and I've only got to play my PS2 on the weekends back then. Which also really fucked my social skills, and I've never had any friends. My homework had to be done immediately after school and I didn't have any rights to eat before it's done. And if I'd get bad grades, which rarely happened, I couldn't play my PS2 on the weekends. Instead, I was forced to only read books. I've even had to interpretate those books on a paper to prove that I've really read them. Now, even though their rules were grotesque, that wasn't the worst thing. The worst thing was, and the thing that was truly contributing a disdain of living my life, was the lack of love and support I've received from my parents. My mom was a very strict and cold-hearted person. She would also blame and yell at them when I do something, even if it was an accident. And my dad, he only knew for these two emotions, frustration and infuriation. Every time he was paying attention to me, was the time when he yelled when I did something wrong or when he used a corporate punishment on me. But enough of my parents, let's now talk about my school psychologist that I refer to as the best one. But because of his privacy, we'll call him Roger. Like lots of kids in my school, I've also had a psychologist available, but TBH, I've never seen any other kid talking with Dr. Roger. Every time at school when I was passing his office to go to the cafeteria, I would have taken a glance at him through the small window on his door. He would always be alone there and do some papyrology. I've simply though that kids were just too embarrassed to have a conversation with him about their own personal problems because he looked like some average person from 1940s, which was very unfamiliar to them, and since I was too afraid to appear like a dork because of talking to him, I've required 3 months to collect that bravery and to finally go to his office and speak with him. 2nd March 2006 was the time I've decided to do it. When there was a break, I've stood in front of his door and knocked, and I've saw through the window that he made a gesture signaling that I come in. He was very respectfully and classically dressed. He wore brown Oxford pants, a fedora hat, brown vest, cream color buttoned shirt and a pointy shoes. And he also had the worst office. My school was arguably financially strong, but his office was just plain and old-fashioned. He greeted me and introduced himself to me with his calming and satisfying voice. His voice was like from nobody from Sesame Street. It also felt like the goodness and delicacy but also intelligence was literally radiating from him. Anyways, I've explained how evil and awful were my parents to me and how they possess absolutely zero interest about me and my feelings. Roger was calmly and carefully listening to my complaints and disdains. He listened them with his hand crossed and he would calmly shake his head a little bit as a sign of understanding. TBH, I've thought that he would start cock-a-doodle-doing about how I was trolling him or that my parents actually love me and they want me to be successful, etc. But no, his methods were pretty original. He looked at me with a smile on his face and said, "You know, I am the best school psychologist on this planet Earth. I promise that I will provide you an adequate enough help. I then asked him how would he do that, and he told me that he has his ways, and also added, I am a man of my word, and I promise that for the next month, your relationships with your parents will be totally backwards from how it is now. He also said that I have to promise that I'll come again later and that I will not tell anybody about it. And I promised. The next day I came back to his office, which was something that nobody else knew since I promised that I won't tell anyone. It was when school ended. After his warm welcoming, he told me that I sit down in front of the table. As I've sat down, he blinded the window with curtain. He smiled and said, "Okay, now we have a maximum privacy." We started chatting about my favorite or least favorite subjects, teachers, etc. After an hour of our conversation, he offered me an energy drink, and I've happily accepted because my parents never gave me the right to consume them, not even normal juices. He opened his small fridge, pulled 2 energy drinks out, and putted them on a table. And we continued chatting about me life, but after about 5 minutes, I fell into a coma, probably from something that Roger putted into my drink. After I finally woke up and observed around, I didn't know what to think. I was tied to a bed and my mouth was taped. I was horrified and I've tried yelling and moving around, but I've gave up in an agile way. I was mildly shocked to see how nice was the room. It had all posters from the Marvel and anime characters. The better part was when I saw that there were multiple Game Boys and PS2 with tons of games. I was extremely confused and wondered why would he keep me in this room in which all kids would like to be in. My heart stopped beating for a brief moment after seeing psychologist Roger coming in and said in a serious manner, "Now listen here, I am here to help you and I swear to God I won't hurt you. This will all work, you better trust me," and then carefully untied me. My instincts almost made me yell and scream, but something about him made me feel safe. "Listen, you will be untied and have to right to play when I am in my office, and every time I leave, I will notify you, but I will also tie one of your hands, thus you will still be watched the TV, but only watch news," he said. I was sitting there for some time, trying to process what the fuck could be happening. He patted my head and said, "Now enjoy, I will be at my office and eat dinner." He turned on the TV and left. I was in a deep state of shock that I could just spontaneously play with every console I want till the night. And when it was 11 p.m., he came in with 3 plates of food, but I've collected some bravery and asked him, "How long am I gonna stay here?" He said about a month. Later he woke me up and said, "Good morning, you don't have to wake up now, but I am gonna have to tie your one hand again." I looked at him, he was still rocking his clothes from yesterday, but anyways he turned on the news on the TV and left. And I was shocked to see the news about myself. There was an image of me, informations about me such as my name, surname, age, school, etc., and also a policeman talking about my incident of my spontaneously disappearing. They've also asked some kids and teachers about some informations as well. Above my image there was also a text saying how FBI is searching for a missing child, and how the kidnapper might be hiding. But I was also shocked to see how they've asked my parents as well, who were literally whining, My mom was barely speaking because of how much did she cry as she held the microphone, and she begged to God that police finds me. And when my dad was given the mic, I've expected him to be acting cold as he usually is, but to my surprise, he was also in a deep state of sadness like my mom, and begged God that I am found as soon as possible. I've turned off the TV and had a mixed emotions. I've felt sad to see my parents cry, but at the same time, I was mildly happy and excited to see that they've actually loved me, and that they are capable of more emotions than just infuriation and frustration. Then it has been 4 more weeks. Psychologist Roger was very respectful to me this whole time and treated me very good. Although he would tie my hand every morning, he would still untie me when he's at the office, and would lots of time play games with me, play board games, etc. But one day, he woke me up and had a surprisingly a strictness in his face. Thus he also woke me up 2 or 3 hours prior than he usually does. Today you are watching this TV for the whole day, got it? Surprisingly he said it so strictly and sharply. I've said of course I will, and he left. 2 hours later the important breaking news appeared called "Human Body Parts Found" with capitalized letters. And then there were 2 burly men who were FBI agents. One of them said, "We are so sorry to reveal these news about missing child," and the other one pulled out some paper and said, "Today we discovered a human body parts this morning. We have a perfect proof and facts that this has to do with something about that case of a missing child, even though it's impossible to commit a visual identification. The body is severely scarred, and there is very little left, mostly ashes and bones. The scene changed, and I could have seen a footage filmed from a helicopter, a place in which they've apparently found my body in a bag. With that body, we've found documents of a missing child, and thanks to them we were able to identify whose body was it. They've shown my ID card that I've used to carry to school. The plastic was melted, but strangely enough my picture, name, etc. were still visible. After those 2 burly men went back, I've saw my parents. They've had such a big pain, agony, and sadness on their face that I couldn't watch it anymore. My dad's head was literally in between his knees. I've turned off the TV. After psychologist Roger came back into his office that day very late, he immediately headed into my room that was actually a basement from his office, handed me a bottle of water, gently grabbed my shoulder, and said, "I've told you, I am the world's best psychologist." I've shaken my head from up to down while trying to hold back my tears. And then he told me to drink that full bottle, since it will help me to fall asleep faster, but I can't tell anybody about his method. His claims of being the world's best psychologist were correct. I woke up that night in the middle of one park. I've immediately recognized that park since it wasn't far away from my house. The stars with the strong light in the sky waited for me to wake up. I went to my house that was about half a mile away. The lights were off, but I could still recognize my dad sitting on a porch. He had giant eye bags. His hair was half white. He looked depressed or even suicidal. I've yelled his name and ran after him. He heard me and ran after me with the speed of light. My mom, who also looked older from all that stress, also got out of the house and ran after me. The world's best psychologist, psychologist Roger, was right. Everything changed for a 100x better in my family. Just like me, my parents are now actually taking care of me, laughing more positive attitude, they let me play and have fun, and I couldn't imagine a better ending. And every now and then I've used to meet psychologist Roger on campus. We rarely spoke to each other, but he sometimes winks and smiles at me. I will go by his wishes and never tell anybody about that. But I just sometimes wonder, from where the heck could have psychologist Roger get that body from?